Alrighty, we are live here from Music Row 411 on YouTube this time, and we are here to answer some of your questions when it comes to songwriting and some mistakes that you can avoid, some things that come up commonly, some things that aren't that common but could be disastrous, and some things that, frankly, you just want to avoid at all costs because they can completely derail your career. And we are doing this as part of our Ultimate Songwriters Sweepstakes for Music Row 411, which you can see sweepstakes.musicrow411.com, scrolling across the bottom of the video right here. You can enter for free. It takes about 10 to 15 seconds and win. Enter to win your chance of enter for your chance to win, more than $30,000 worth of prizes that we are giving away for singers, songwriters, creatives, and artists working towards a better career in the music industry. You can check out the full details there at sweepstakes.musicrow411.com. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome Beth Rayback Hall. I'm Justin from Music Row 411, and Beth and I are the co-founders of Music Row 411. And the reason we're really here, and the reason that we do what we do at Music Row 411, is to help people and creatives in the music industry, help singers, songwriters, artists, musicians, people who want to pursue a career, who want to follow their passion, but they don't have the connection or the resources to really know the nitty-gritty of the behind-the-scenes stuff in the industry. And so we want to help you accelerate your success and speed up your learning curve. And so without further ado, I'd like to welcome Beth to our live session here. And by the way, guys and gals, if you are listening and you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the comments section, and we will do our best to answer those live. But we do have a whole bunch of questions that have been submitted by participants in the sweepstakes, which ends this July 30th. So Beth, welcome to our live session here. I know you're excited to cover a lot of this stuff. I guess without really, beating around the bush, why do you think it is so important to understand the mistakes that songwriters make and how to avoid those for somebody who's really getting into the industry?
Well, thanks, Justin. I'm thrilled to be here as always, and I welcome all of you who are tuning in. We want to help you and hope this information is going to be useful to you. It's very, very important, especially in the entertainment business, to try to understand how things work on the very front end, because it saves you a lot of time and money and heartache as you move through your career and the process of achieving your career. So one of the things we decided we thought we would share with you right off the bat is some of the top mistakes that people make when they're embarking on their songwriting career, or they may already be in their career and moving forward, but may not be aware of some of the things that could potentially hurt you. You can shoot yourself in the foot without even knowing it. And that's just the way this business works. It is shrouded in mystery and lots of unwritten rules. And you can learn a lot, but you really have to kind of know the inside tricks. So
yeah, those unwritten rules, I think that's a really interesting, notion, because for a lot of people, they see the industry from the exterior, and they see this polished machine and just assume like, oh, well, if I'm really talented and I work really hard, I'm gonna obviously be successful because I'm motivated and I'm willing to put in the work. What are a couple of those hidden rules? Just the top one or two, just to give people some gold right off the bat here.
Well, first of all, it relates to probably the biggest mistake people make, and that's they don't know where they are in the process. And you might say, well, what do you mean I don't know where I am? I'm writing songs, so I'm doing it, right? Well, no, not necessarily, because writing songs is a very complex endeavor if you are aspiring to have a position within the ecosystem of the music industry to eventually earn money from your songs and your compositions and your creations. So where are you? And so that would be the first one if you have no earthly idea where you are. And so how do you figure that out? Well, one of the things we teach in our courses, and it's very kind of helpful, is to know, what do you know? And do you know what song structures are? There are 7 major song structures. Do you know what they are and how they work? And even more basic than that, do you understand the functions of a component of a song? So if you don't understand what a bridge is, or a hook, or some of the other components of a song, and how they're described and what they do or what they're supposed to do within the structure of the song, musically, lyrically, and how it all works together, then you've got to go back to the beginning and start looking at those structures and practicing writing to those structures within those formats. And so many of you may already be doing that, and that's great. And we applaud you for being there, but you still have to know what level you are. And all levels are good. There is no bad level. So that's the first thing you have to know. But if you want to move forward, you've got to figure out and do a real honest self-assessment. I need to know more about the songwriting process. I need to know how all of this works within a particular genre. So that's kind of the first biggie that people need to figure out. And that sort of leads into the next mistake that folks make, which is expecting too much too soon. That's a hard pill to swallow, but just like with any other competitive pursuit of something, if you're an athlete, it takes way, 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 way more hours and years to really achieve the record-breaking times or games or whatever. It just doesn't happen overnight. And nothing is more true of that in the entertainment business. So going back to figuring out where you are, you can sort of start to put together a timeline for yourself and set some goals that are realistic. Maybe it's finishing your first song that is matching up to a particular song structure. Or maybe it's learning how to write really good lyrics, or working on the craft of songwriting, which is an entirely different subject matter, but it's very much part of the song process. And not being hard on yourself. One of the things I think, and Music Row 411 thinks, is that we have a saying, and we say there's a lot of real estate to be had between being a nobody and being a superstar. So what your job is to figure out where you are on that spectrum and what you want. So if you want to work on your songwriting career with the goal of having your songs recorded by people who are already signed by big record labels, and they're going to take your songs out into the world and get them on terrestrial radio and all the streaming services and all the vehicles for distribution, that is one goal. And that's a long-term goal, and it takes a lot of time. But maybe you want to get good enough just to perform out locally and be able to go sing a writer's night, or in your town at an event after, when we get back out of COVID. But maybe that's not a bad goal, because if that's where you are and you need to get there, that's a great goal. That's a great goal. And so you don't want to assign too many expectations that are unrealistic when you're trying to master this big thing called songwriting. And it's all good, and you're going to get there. But it does take time, and it does take persistence. So we sort of outline all of those steps in our Better Songwriting 101. We've been going over that stuff in the sweepstakes, and people have been getting great resources that sort of help facilitate that process. But you know, you have to be realistic, and that comes down to three things. What do you know, where are you? What do you want? And how hard do you want to work? So once you have the answers to those questions, or at least an inkling of what you think your answers are, then you can get going, and you're going to make far fewer mistakes by being realistic, by being honest, and figuring out, you know, we all don't know what we don't know, right? So you need to figure out what you don't know so that you can get busy doing that.
Well, and I think having certainly the right level of expectations is important for people, and adjusting those to their experience. But I think something that you brought up a couple minutes ago that people really often overlook is treating it like a job, and understanding, you know, really how the industry works, and really that it's not any different than any other industry in terms of the goal of industry. And what are some mistakes that you see for people who, you know, they maybe say they want to be a songwriter? Because we've had a lot of people, you know, ask the question, or, you know, relate that they want to be a thing, but they're not necessarily committed to that or pursuing a career in the industry. So what are some of the mistakes that people make when they get going, but they don't really know what that commitment means?
Well, first of all, going back to the learning what you know and what you don't know, you absolutely have to understand that first and foremost, if your goal is to have your songs recorded either by yourself or someone else for commercial consumption that you want, and that can mean you don't even get paid. I mean, streaming services are fractions of pennies on the dollar. But if you want your music out there in the world to be consumed by other people, the very first thing that you have to realize and you have to understand is that it's a business. It is the music business. And believe me, the business part is the really, really tough part. But if you understand it, if you know how it works, you do your homework, you do your research, then all the pieces fit together. But just being a great songwriter or mastering your craft and, you know, writing what you think are great songs, they don't live in a vacuum. And it all is a very well-oiled machinery. There are lots of ways to go about it, and there are several different ways that it works. You know, and we get into all of that in our courses, but you've got to do the research to understand what this thing looks like. And if you think about it, if you were to go into finance or real estate or being a teacher, you would have to understand how that works and how you fit in that system, and what are the different roles within that system, and what do they look like, and why are they important? So the music industry is a super complex ecosystem, but there is so much information available now that you can learn it. There's some great books, there are great things online, and it'll also make you, the other thing about learning about the business and researching is it also does two things. It increases your confidence level, and it helps you be a part of a community. Because as you're doing this research and as you're talking to other people. It might be people in your hometown. It might be people that you're in a band with, whatever it is. You are building a community for yourself and being part of a much bigger community. So you have to understand how the business works. And people expect you to know that, because if you show up as a rube, not knowing anything and not having done any homework, people are not gonna, they don't have time for that, and they won't spend any time, because their attitude is, well, they don't even care enough to figure out, you know, what this is or whatever. So
and how many strikes is somebody going to get in that, you know, like how many for people who don't really have the perspective of how serious this is, I mean, is this something where you're going to get a second chance, or is this you know, you're going to, you know, 3 strikes and you're out? What kind of?
We always tell people, and this is a fact, this is not something we arbitrarily made up. Nashville's kind of known as a 10-year town, but what we tell people, are you prepared to spend 7 to 15 years of your life for a maybe? So that's a very realistic, 10 years is a very, very realistic number of what it kind of takes to get to a point where people are paying attention to you and maybe cutting your songs, and you're doing important songwriter nights or whatever, you're getting attention. So it's really, really important to do things in the proper order, because not only is it going to help you not try to get ahead of yourself too fast and make mistakes doing that, it's also going to give, once again, enhance your confidence, but show people who you might have an opportunity to play your songs for, that you're serious about it. And the music business is a really funny thing. So you mentioned earlier, Justin, that there are a lot of unwritten rules, and that's absolutely true. So you could conceivably meet somebody at a show and think you've gotten off on the right foot, ask them for their card, they share it with you, but it becomes increasingly obvious to this other person, you don't know anything, and you're overstepping by trying to become too familiar or whatever. There are all these sort of unwritten things. And then that guy or girl goes back to their office and throws your card in the trash and say, make a note of this name and never let them near me, or I don't want to get a phone call or an email or whatever. And so you've been completely ghosted and you don't even know it. But people don't have time for people who don't do their homework.
And that can happen on the first time.
Oh, absolutely. And you don't. Here's another thing. If you do have an opportunity, and it's a relationship business, it's a business built on relationships. From the very beginning to the very top of the food chain, it's all about relationships and building in a trust factor. So you only get so many chances until you're at a certain level, to kind of get your name out there. So I can't say it's 3 strikes and you're out, but you know, if you come across as this pesky, you know, irritating person that, you know, you're nowhere near where you should be to even be approaching people or submitting songs, and you don't even know that, you're going to fall to the bottom of the list, as opposed to people who are steadily increasing their knowledge, working on their songs, writing better songs, getting feedback, writing with other people, getting better. You know, that's, you don't want to, it's just like we tell people, you don't put your first song or your first singing experience up on YouTube. You just don't do it, because digital media, things live forever. And maybe you get to a point where you have that killer song and you have that killer voice and you've worked really hard on it. But somebody who they're saying, hey, check out this person, sees that very first thing you put up there and they think you're awful. You don't need that. That's the kind of mistake that is so simple, but you need to know it. You need to know what to do, what not to do, when to do things. And, you know, if you follow the guidance that you invest in yourself by taking our course or learning or lesson, whatever, you're going to get there a lot faster, a lot happier, and a lot, I wouldn't say richer. It's a very expensive, it's like anything else creative. It costs a lot of money to develop expertise. It just does, over time. But yeah, you don't, you know, another thing that I often tell people is you absolutely cannot be arrogant. You cannot be entitled. You can't be impatient. If your next door neighbor's sister is in the music business and she says to you, well, I would be willing to send my song, your song, to her to get her opinion of it. And she does. You cannot bug that person incessantly. Did you hear my song? Have you listened to it? You know, what do you think? Once again, there's a lot of unwritten protocol about that. Most people don't take unsolicited material. Very, very few people do. And there are a lot of reasons for it, but the primary one is it is a liability issue for them. They don't want unsolicited material that they don't have rights to because they don't want to be liable or anything like that. So if somebody is kind enough to share a contact or offer to make an introduction for you, you need to research that person and read everything you can about them. You need to know what they do, what they've done, what songs they've worked on, or records or artists they've worked with. And you need to be really humble and appreciative that they are taking the time to spend with you to listen to your material. And you don't want to overwhelm them. You want to pick your best one or two, no more songs. And
I think that's also a really interesting segue kind of into a question that we've gotten live here in the comments. And if you're watching this live or you're watching us on the replay, feel free to drop your questions, your comments, your feedback in the comments section below this video. We'll be checking back and adding and creating more content as things come around. But you mentioned the mistake of putting out something that is less than your best, or potentially, you know, say your very first attempt at a recording or your very first, you know, shot at just a rough demo, and putting that out there and having that material, unfortunately, you know, get discovered in a negative way. One of the questions that came up here, and I'm going to pull this up into the comments from David, is I have a question. Besides social media, you know, Instagram, Facebook, etc., and live gigs, what is an additional way to market your music? And so an excellent question, and one that's also fraught with mistakes, because sometimes, you know, people will say, do whatever you have to do to get your music out there. And the fact is, that's just not a great answer. Certainly there is a lot of good intention behind that answer, right? It does require tremendous passion. You're going to have to work your butt off. You're going to have to really work to promote yourself. But what are some of the ways that actually work for people to promote and market their own music?
Okay, well, thank you, David, for asking that. That's a great question. So there are great opportunities and services and platforms now that can help you market your music. The indie market for songwriters and musicians has exploded over the last couple of years, and it's not going to calm down anytime soon. I mean, there are plenty of musicians and songwriters making six figures, and nobody's ever heard of them. And that's because they have learned to practice their craft, find a voice for themselves through their art, through their songs, or their music, and just keep fine-tuning it, finding connections with people and getting out there and putting it out there, but when they're ready, so that you can start to gain some traction. Don't get me wrong, everybody has to start somewhere. God knows I cringe when I think about like one of the first industry conferences that I was fortunate enough to get a showcase spot on. And, you know, that's the other thing in the music business. People don't really tell you what they think most of the time. You can hear crickets a lot, or, yeah, it's kind of like, oh, bless her little heart. So once, the very first thing, going back to that, I'm backing up a little bit, is you want to find a group of people, not a huge group, but people that you're either writing with, or maybe they're further ahead of you, or, you know, somebody that has, maybe there's a club owner in your town or somebody who runs a writer's night, and you want to be getting feedback on what you're working on your material, okay? And ask them honestly, do you think this is good enough to play out? And so you're going to hit that point where you get consensus that your music is at a level that it can be recorded and sent out into the world to live its own little life. Everybody starts somewhere, and the first stuff people put out is not always their best, but you know, who cares? So what you want to do is go back to the Google again, or look up, you know, into some resources like the Indie Bible is an excellent resource. They put it out every year. You can get a digital version of it, and it lists everything from bloggers to venues to radio stations to PR opportunities, and start really looking around to see what is available. There are things like Sonic Bids and bands in town if you're a band, and they've just started pushing people into Twitch if they have a certain amount of followers. CD Baby is always a premier way to find services for independent songwriters and musicians. Bandzoogle is another one. There are so many different services, and now there are even, you know, there are apps like one of our partners, We Should Write Sometime, is a songwriting app that allows you to meet other songwriters through the app. It's a swipe right, and you can fill out a profile on that and find other people that way, which also then gets your name out there and people start to see it. So, you know, you want to network as much as you can, and you can do that even during COVID. We Should Write Sometime is a great one. You could join a songwriters association in your area. Most of those organizations have moved their seminars or their sort of meet and greet things online, but you want to start being in a network. And then you're going to ask people, you know, go to Meetup and see what sort of songwriter gatherings there are in your area. It, you know, with all the shows that have come out, talent shows, it's really kind of exploded everywhere. If you live in a college town, go check out what they offer. They may have organizations, they may have publications. You could, you know, get your music to the editor and say, hey, could you give it a listen and write it up? College radio stations are fabulous places.
I was just about to say the college radio station scene is where so many people have been discovered, and hell, Dave Matthews has had
REM
decades-long career because of college radio and the popularity that stemmed from that. So
Just because you may not be in Nashville, New York, LA, or a big music town like New Orleans or Miami, people love entertainment. And there are local radio shows, and there's a local bulletin board publication online. You want to find some people and, just cultivate them. Pick out 2 or 3. Don't bug them. Just create a relationship. It's like you're creating a friendship. So you want to say, hey, would you give my music a listen? I really am trying to get better and trying to see what resonates with people, and I would love your feedback. And, that's building a connection with somebody. And that's what it's all about, connection. Humans need connection. And if you are able to create with song, with music, with art, with dance, that's what people gravitate to that. So, you have to be your own best ambassador, because you got to believe in yourself. And even if you have to fake it till you make it, there's a lot of truth in that. Start reaching out to people locally. You could even play it for somebody that, I don't know, maybe the mayor of your town or something, if you know them, or influencers or readers, and just start. You will get honest opinions. People used to say, well, go into Starbucks and ask somebody, say, hey, what would you think of this business idea? And, but people are curious, and they just love to be included in something. And, the other thing is, people never know who's going to be the next big thing. Do you think anybody gave Billie Eilish, the time of day a couple of years ago? Or Lizzo? Ed Sheeran can go do a stadium tour with just him and his guitar because he connects to people. So, which brings me to another point of mistakes and things you can do to avoid them and make your own music better. You really need to understand what genre you want to write in, because they're different. What works in hip hop doesn't work in country necessarily. Even though there's a fusion of many genres happening now, you still have to understand the fundamental sort of subject matter, chord structures, beats, all of those, different things that make up songs and why people listen to different types of music. And you really need to know that. You need to make sure your songs are telling stories. Hi, Emphatic. How are you? Good to see you. That's the very first thing, is do not have your songs all over the place. They have to tell a story. And that's what people are listening for, is the connection point of a story, right? So what does a story have? A beginning, a middle, and an end. So run your songs through a checklist of those things. What am I saying? Can people understand what I'm saying? So you can avoid a lot of embarrassing mistakes if you take the time, take your ego out of it, and start asking honestly of your little children, your songs, your precious babies, is this saying something? If I were not the person writing this, would I understand what I am saying and what the point of this song is? Don't make your songs avoid having them all sound the same, You have to have some variety, and that is for a lot of different reasons, but you have to be able to be nimble, and you have to show depth. And we're all creatures of habit, and we may have certain chords we love, and we always like to write in those chords. Well, break it up a little. Try something else. Try adding new chords. Oh, I love this emphatic. Break it up, make it interesting. Play a little game with yourself. That's what I always tell when I'm teaching people. I have them write a song 3 different ways. And we go over all of these things in great depth in Better Songwriting 101. So we hope you'll check that out on our website at musicrow411.com. But there are so many different ways that you can make it fun, and you can challenge yourself, and you've got to do that to keep your spirit strong and to keep your imagination going. Think of like, if I were talking to somebody in the grocery store, what would that sound like what I'm writing about? I'm telling my sorrow tale of this. I got jilted. She broke up with me. How would you tell somebody about that? In a normal voice, not what you think or somebody else has written. Don't imitate people, And then the other thing about that, I'll say one thing. Going back to the need to know how the business works. What you are hearing today, regardless of where you get your music, if it's on the radio, if it's a streaming service, whatever, those songs were recorded 18 months ago and maybe longer. So you don't want to try to copy what you're hearing today because it's not going to be relevant. That's why it's bad to imitate people. Whenever somebody comes out and blows up, there's 9 million wannabe look-alike, sound-alike people. And that's not helpful. That's not helpful for you. If you're in a cover band, it is. And then you want to be the best sound-alike you can. But
I actually think that brings up a really interesting, just point of, you mentioned a cover band, and I think so many people, they're so dedicated to their craft and their art and their creations that they overlook. We've gotten the questions, and this is not in our songwriting course, but it's in our Better Bands course, and also it's somewhat in our Better Gigs course. But what is the benefit, or what are some of the mistakes that people make in not developing their musical craft outside of, their own personal creative identity, whether that's as a singer or a songwriter or as a member of a band? But what are some of the mistakes people make when they're not focused on just getting better at the fundamentals, and they're only focused on what they're doing, for their own craft?
That you can look at that a lot of different ways, but I always tell people, when I was an active touring musician, songwriter, performer, we had my Beth Rayback Hall and the Usual Suspects, and then we had Monkey Time, which was the cover band. Guess who made more money? There is no shame being in a musical group that plays other people's music, a cover band, a wedding band, whatever, special events band, whatever you want to call it. There are show bands that get hired for big benefits and galas and weddings, 6 figures plus those musicians are making because they play really high ticket things. People play in bands on cruises and make a bloody fortune. You have to be sharpening your saw all the time. And that means even if you just get together with people that you love to play, Def Leppard with, or, you want to be Mumford and Sons, and you jam together, you've got to be practicing all the time. You have to be getting better at your instrument if your desire is to be performing. Same thing with those. Everything that you do in music is a muscle. It's a muscle, your mental muscles, your technical muscles. And you got to this is another thing that you can certainly avoid this mistake. There is nothing worse than playing something for somebody when you have an opportunity to get in front of someone and you play them something that is so dated, because it tells them you don't know anything. You're not staying in touch, you know, that you will get dismissed right then and there. I can't stress that enough. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the latest production chops, but that's why you have to pay attention to what is popular. What are people listening to? What is the new music? Find some channels on Spotify or Sirius or Pandora, whatever. Discover new artists. Listen to what's going on out there. There's a lot of exciting stuff.
So synthesizers drenched in chorus effects are what, with super long hairspray here. We're talking 30 years too late at this, almost 40 years too late at this point.
Well, there are all kinds of tribute bands that are making a ton of money. They were before the clubs were all closed, but there are a couple. I can think of a ton of different bands that are or artists that are sort of going back to retro sounds. But when you think about that and you listen, it's nuanced. It is shades of, and they may have that synth sound, but it's a modern lyric. And it's presented in a modern format, meaning, you're not going to hear Inagata Devita. I'm dating myself back to the time of the dinosaurs, but, you have to pay attention to how long are songs. Unless you're on the jam band scene, and that's a whole different story. But I can't stress enough, scoot around the radio dial when you're driving in the car. Listen to the different formats, the different stations. What do things sound like? You don't have to like it, but what you hear now in country music radio is like demos we were all doing in the 80s and 90s, and that's the way music works. So you have to be authentic, whatever it is you're doing. I mean, Michael Bublé is not a household word, but people love him. And he took his voice and his love of singing that style of music, and he made a magnificent career out of it. So one size does not fit all. You just have to figure out where you want to fit and what makes sense. Because I don't care if you are not authentic, that's the biggest career killer. You don't have to be a great singer to write great songs, but you do have to be real.
Well, and I think that's we've been going, I guess, about 45 minutes, close enough to 45 minutes here that we can kind of call it a wrap. We're going on a Friday night, but keeping it real and keeping it relatable is exactly what we're here to do for you at Music Row 411. We want to help make real advice very relatable and, more importantly, accessible for you. And so if you have not had a chance yet, I'm going to encourage you, go ahead and enter the Ultimate Songwriters Sweepstakes that we are having here at Music Row 411. We are wrapping that up in just 6 short days. And that is an opportunity for you to win more than $30,000 worth of prizes that we're giving away. And that includes, you can check out the details obviously at the URL scrolling below, but that includes prizes like a free website built just for you to promote your band, your brand, your music, so that you can go out and you can market yourself confidently. It includes all access passes to our entire education platform so that you can get great information like the stuff we're covering here, but in depth and in detail, and stuff that you can take that's actionable right now, stuff that you can take and apply real progress to your songwriting craft and career. as well as booking better gigs and working with better bands and having a better creative surrounding. But that is so that you have the confidence moving forward to pursue your career, knowing that you're going to have an accelerated learning curve and that you are not going to be making all of these mistakes that so many people make that leave their career wasting by the wayside because they didn't know what to avoid and how to avoid it. And then, of course, we are going to be giving away a half day of songwriting and career coaching and mentoring. And that's coming from none other than Beth Rayback Hall here live with us, our founder of Music Growth 411. And if it's not evidenced enough by this last 45 minutes or so that she knows what she's talking about, you can check the people she's written with. You can check the accolades and the recognition she's had professionally. And you can see her music and hear how dynamite it is anywhere on YouTube. I encourage you to check it out for yourself. But that half day is obviously something that you can get just life-changing advice and personalized perspective on how you can accomplish your goals and get where you want to go in your career, because that's ultimately what it's about, right? There is no cookie cutter answer, especially in this industry. And then we have a bonus prize that's been added here fairly recently from none other than Doug DeAngelis, who has got more than 4,000 sync placements to his name, which means getting music in movies and television, right? It's something that certainly everybody, if you're talking about marketing your music, if you're talking about getting your sound and your name out there, is a huge deal. And Doug has volunteered a private one-on-one session to help the grand prize winner of the sweepstakes work with getting their music synced with movies and TV. And of course, we are giving away more than just the grand prize. We're giving away first place, second place, and third place prizes totaling more than $30,000. And those are going to be given away to people who participate in the sweepstakes. So make sure that you enter by visiting sweepstakes.musicgrow411.com. And that is going to take you to our webpage where you can enter online. You just click the button, fill out the form. It takes about 10 to 15 seconds. And entering is totally free. We will be drawing our winners in just about a week or so, which means that you have time to enter and time to actually maximize your entries. You'll find instructions on how to do that right after you enter. So go ahead and head to sweepstakes.musicgrow411.com to enter today. I want to say thank you once again to everybody for watching live and answering and submitting your questions in the comments. And of course, anybody catching us on the replay. Our goal at Music Growth 411, again, is to help you. So if you want to share this, if you want to if you want to subscribe, just know that we are going to be delivering more of this similar great content and doing more of these live sessions so that we can help you get the answers, the information, and the education that is real and relatable, keep you moving forward towards your goals. So thank you from Beth and myself for watching this video. We appreciate you being here live with us at Music Growth 411. Have a great, safe evening. And if you're watching us on the replay, feel free to drop your comments down below and we will answer your questions in a future session. Take care.
Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.